If you think Paul Newman was just another pretty face with blue eyes, you should have seen the prime. From 1956 to 1975, he didn't chase roles, he cracked a code. The code that turned antiheroes into box office gold, stillness into danger, and cool into actual currency. Hollywood had leading men before Newman. They were clean-cut, heroic, emotionally available. Newman rewired the wiring, made audiences hunger for characters who withheld, who simmered, who refused to explain themselves. Here's how he built the blueprint, the numbers that proved it worked, and the one reported scandal that nearly burned it all down. 1956, Newman gets handed Somebody Up There Likes Me after James Dean wraps his Porsche around a telephone pole. The role was Dean's, a scrappy middleweight boxer named Rocky Graziano, clawing out of the Bronx. Newman's first major film, The Silver Chalice, had bombed so hard he took out a newspaper ad apologizing for it. So this is a rescue mission. Director Robert Wise needs Newman to disappear into Graziano, not play movie star, play damaged goods. Newman delivers. He makes Graziano wounded, volatile, barely contained. More Montgomery Clift than John Wayne. Critics who'd written him off suddenly reverse course. The film cracks the top 20 at the box office. Newman lands Oscar consideration. But here's what matters. Audiences leaned in. They didn't want clean heroes anymore. They wanted complicated. They wanted mess. Newman registered the shift. If that cracked the door, then The Hustler in 1961 kicked it clean off the hinges. Robert Rawson directs. His philosophy is brutal. Strip away the armor. Expose the rot underneath. Fast Eddie Felson is a pool shark. Brilliant with a cue. Catastrophic with everything else. Selfish. Destructive. A loser in a cheap suit chasing one big score. Newman could have played him as charming rogue. Instead, he goes full method. Spent weeks in actual pool halls on the Lower East Side, studying the angles, the rhythm, the quiet violence of the hustle. Learned to shoot left-handed so the camera could catch his face during trick shots. The film pulls 11 million admissions in 1961 at 69 cents a ticket. That's 11 million people paying to watch Newman play a self-destructive mess, and they're rooting for him anyway. Second Oscar nomination. The role becomes the template. Fast Eddie is the prototype for every Newman character that follows. Flawed, hungry, unwilling to bend. Martin Ritt takes the template and stress tests it with HUD in 1963. Ritt's a former actor studio teacher, Newman's teacher actually, and his philosophy is make the audience complicit. Don't let them off the hook. Newman plays HUD Bannon like a ticking bomb. Charming when he wants something, cruel when he doesn't get it, selfish to the bone. The script calls HUD a man who lives for himself. Ritt pushes Newman to inhabit a character audiences should hate, and Newman nails it. Audiences are hypnotized. They can't looks. Away. Third Oscar nomination. The film grosses 10 million domestic, eventually clearing 100 million adjusted. Newman's now working at the outer edge of what a leading man can get away with. He's rewriting the permission structure. If Ritt taught him to push boundaries, then George Roy Hill taught him to own the aftermath. Cool Hand Luke, 1967. Stuart Rosenberg directs. But it's Newman's infrastructure. Luke Jackson is a prisoner on a southern chain gang who won't break, won't bend, won't beg. The warden tells him they're going to break his spirit. Luke smiles and says nothing. That's the performance in a nutshell. Newman plays it with radical economy, minimal dialogue, maximum presence. Watch the egg-eating scene. 50 hard-boiled eggs in an hour. Newman plays it like a religious act. Doesn't speak, just endures. The camera holds on his face as he chews, sweats, refuses to quit. It becomes mythology. 16 million at the box office. Fourth Oscar nomination. Newman made silence dangerous. The signature isn't the rebellion. It's the stillness. Newman understood what Brando and Dean didn't. You don't have to emote to dominate. Let the camera come to you. Hold the frame. Make the audience work for your interior life. Brando exploded. Dean agonized. Newman withheld. That restraint becomes the blueprint for every cool anti-hero that follows. McQueen studies it. Redford mirrors it. Decades later, Clooney and Pitt reverse engineer it. All of them chasing the same math. Less equals more. Here's the influence trail. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969 births the buddy film genre. William Goldman writes the script for $400,000, the highest price ever paid for a screenplay at that time. After Butch Cassidy hits, Goldman writes every heist comedy afterward in that shadow. Tom Cruise seeks Newman out in 1986 for The Color of Money, specifically to learn how Newman balanced art and commerce. They shoot pool for 3 months. Cruise later says Newman taught him more about wardrobe and stillness than any acting coach. Brad Pitt watches HUD before filming Fight Club because he wants to understand how to play charismatic evil. He calls Newman's stillness the graduate course in not trying too hard. Fashion designers cite the Newman wardrobe as proof that less is more. Jeans, white tee, leather jacket as architecture. Scorsese tells Esquire in 1991 that Newman understood the camera sees through performance to truth. He never pushed. The camera came to him. But technique is one thing. Results are another. Let's talk receipts. Newman operated with surgical precision. What looks like ease on screen is actually brutal discipline. Here's the playbook. Stillness as voltage. In The Hustler, the final showdown with Minnesota Fats. Newman barely moves for 3 full minutes. Just his eyes tracking the cue ball, his body completely still. But the stillness registers as coiled threat, like he's about to strike. You can't look away, because you're waiting for the eruption that never comes. He learned this from watching Spencer Tracy. Less is nuclear. In the hands of a great actor, doing nothing becomes everything. Angles over emotion. Directors loved that Newman knew his light instinctively. George Roy Hill said Newman understood his face was a landscape that needed the right weather. In HUD, cinematographer James Wong Howe shoots Newman in harsh West Texas sun. Those blue eyes become ice, dead, inhuman. Newman adjusted his position instinctively to catch the glare, make it work for the character. Patricia Neal, his co-star, told the LA Times, Paul knew exactly where to stand, so the light made him look like a rattlesnake. That's craft, not luck. Timing over volume. The bicycle scene in Butch Cassidy. Newman does his own stunts after the professional can't stay upright. Newman steps in, does it in 2 takes, plays it loose, almost goofy, like a kid showing off. Raindrops Keep Fallin' on My Head plays over it. Burt Bacharach's pop song in the middle of a Western. The scene shifts the entire film's tone, from violent to playful to melancholy in 4 minutes. Hill called it jazz improvisation with a script, economy of gesture. Cool Hand Luke, the final scene. Luke's been beaten, shot at, dragged back over and over. Now he's in a church, hiding. He knows they're coming to kill him. What does Newman do? He smiles. That's it. Just a small, sad smile at the camera. No tears, no speech. Just that smile, like he's in on the joke and you're not. That smile does more work than 10 pages of dialogue. Newman trusted the audience to finish the sentence. Wardrobe as statement. Newman treated costume like character architecture. Fast Eddie's rumpled, cheap suit in The Hustler. It tells you he's a hustler living hand to mouth before Eddie says a word. Cut to HUD. Tailored shirts, crisp jeans, boots polished like mirrors. HUD's got money, vanity, control. Costume designer Edith Head told The Hollywood Reporter, Paul argued for every texture, every color. He understood wardrobe photographed as intention. Most actors put on what you give them. Paul wore character, not clothes, partnering as elevation. Newman made everyone around him better. Watch Butch Cassidy again. Newman plays Butch calm, measured. That gives Redford permission to play Sundance hot, impulsive, dangerous. The chemistry isn't accidental. Newman actively creates space for Redford to shine. He gives him the flashy moments, the quick draw scenes, the girl. Scorsese noticed when he directed The Color of Money. Newman understood a film isn't a solo, it's a duet. He made Tom Cruise better just by giving him room to breathe. Conviction without righteousness. Newman's antiheroes never apologize. HUD doesn't regret. Fast Eddie doesn't reform. Luke doesn't submit. Even when they lose, they don't repent. That commitment to moral ambiguity, letting characters be deeply flawed without forcing redemption arcs, was radical in the 60s. Newman told Playboy in 1968, I'm not interested in playing heroes. Heroes are boring. They do the right thing, They sacrifice, they're noble. Where's the drama in that? I want to play the guys who make the wrong choice and live with it. Now, let's count the wins. 1958. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, opposite Elizabeth Taylor. First Oscar nomination. Box office smash. Newman's officially a dramatic heavyweight, not just the pretty boy from the Silver Chalice. 1961. The Hustler. Second nomination, 11 million admissions. 77 million adjusted worldwide. Newman creates the Fast Eddie archetype, the gifted loser who won't quit, even when quitting is the smart move. 1963. HUD. Third nomination. 10 million domestic. 100 million adjusted. Newman proves audiences will follow darkness if you make it compelling. Critics were horrified at how charming Newman made evil look. That's the point. 1967. Cool Hand. Luke. Fourth nomination. 16 million gross. 105 million adjusted. What we've got here is failure to communicate enters pop culture permanently. The American Film Institute ranks it the 11th greatest movie quote of all time. Even the Beatles tell the press, Newman's the Hollywood star they most want to meet. 1969. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. This is the peak. Highest grossing film of the year. Over 100 million domestic. Newman becomes the #1 box office star of 1969 and 1970. 2 years running. The film cracks AFI's top 100 greatest American films. Newman and Redford become the most iconic buddy duo in cinema history from a single film. 1973. The Sting reunites Newman with Redford and Hill. 7 Oscars, including Best Picture. 705 million adjusted worldwide. Biggest film of the year. For a brief window, Hill is the only director in history with 2 films in the all-time top 10. Both star Newman. By 1975, Newman's appeared on the Quigley Poll top grossing list 13 times. 6 Oscar nominations in the prime window. 2 films in the all-time box office top 10. He's worked with Hitchcock, Ritt, Rawson, Hill, auteurs who demanded precision. And he's created a persona so durable, it's still the manual. But here's where the story gets complicated. Numbers were peaking, then the headlines started. During Butch Cassidy filming in 1968, journalist Nancy Bacon, who worked for Confidential magazine, claimed an 18-month affair with Newman. She told tabloids it was the worst-kept secret in Hollywood, alleging Redford helped cover for Newman when Joanne Woodward visited the set. Bacon's story. Newman explained absences by claiming he was shooting other films. Bacon later stated she ended things because of Newman's heavy drinking, claiming in Sean Levy's 2009 biography that he wore a bottle opener on a chain and drank up to a case of beer a day, followed by scotch. Newman and Woodward responded by taking out a full-page ad in the Los Angeles Times, denying any marital problems. The marriage survived, lasted another 40 years until Newman's death in 2008. But the story lingered. Some dismissed it as tabloid invention. Others pointed out timeline inconsistencies. Bacon claimed 18 months starting late 1968, but published her first article about it in September 1969. Not 18 months, maybe 9. And Newman's next film after Butch Cassidy was shot with Woodward. Hard to be secretly meeting someone when you're on location with your wife. Still, the drinking rumors had substance. Newman acknowledged in his posthumous 2022 memoir, he took it as far as it could go, with alcohol in the early 70s. He called it the luxury of being out of control. Co-stars noticed. Crew members on Slapshot reported Newman's intake, but praised his professionalism. He drank heavily off set, but never let it touch the work. Then, 1978, detonated everything. Newman's son Scott, from his first marriage, died from an accidental overdose of tranquilizers and alcohol. He was 28. Scott had worked as a stuntman on Newman's films, including The Towering Inferno. He'd struggled with addiction for years, haunted by living in his father's shadow. After a motorcycle accident, Scott was taking painkillers. On November 19th, he mixed them with Valium and alcohol in a Los Angeles hotel room. Police ruled it accidental. Newman later wrote, "There's nothing you can say that will repair my guilt about Scott. It will be with me as long as I live." He established the Scott Newman Center for Drug Abuse Prevention. The loss visibly altered him. Roles shifted. Politics intensified. The philanthropic turn accelerated. But the work outlasted the noise. Newman made the verdict in 1982. playing an alcoholic lawyer with brutal honesty. Critics called it his finest performance. He didn't win the Oscar, but the film proved he'd turned pain into craft. The scandals became footnotes. The films remained monuments. Newman cracked a code, and Hollywood's been copying it for 50 years. The modern anti-hero, morally gray, effortlessly cool, economical with emotion, that's Newman's blueprint. Directors copied the template. Scorsese's taxi driver Travis Bickle is Luke Jackson with a mohawk. Tarantino's entire aesthetic borrows Newman's rhythm. The long silences, the sudden violence, the characters who stay cool, even as everything collapses. Tarantino told Empire magazine, "Every time I write a character who's supposed to be cool under pressure, I'm basically writing Paul Newman in HUD." The Coen brothers cite HUD as why they make movies about charming bastards. Actors studied the tapes like sacred texts. Cruise called The Color of Money his graduate school in movie stardom. Working with Newman taught him how to balance commerce and art. Brad Pitt watched HUD repeatedly before Fight Club. Tyler Durden is HUD Bannon in Anarchist Skin. George Clooney modeled his Ocean's 11 persona on Newman's ease. Even Daniel Craig's Bond is Newman-filtered. Wounded still. Dangerous without trying. Craig told The Guardian he watched The Hustler before every Bond film to remember how to hold the camera without doing anything. Fashion followed. The Newman look. Denim, white tee, Rolex Daytona, aviators, still codes as effortless masculinity. Ralph Lauren built an empire on it. When Newman's personal Rolex sold at auction in 2017, it went for $17.8 million. That's not nostalgia. That's influence becoming literal currency. And the buddy film? Goldman said Butch Cassidy created a genre that didn't exist before. Every buddy cop film, every heist comedy, every reluctant partnership, from Lethal Weapon to Rush Hour to The Nice Guys, they're all trying to bottle what Newman and Redford generated. The trick was, Newman understood. Chemistry isn't about matching energy, it's about opposite energies. One guy hot, one guy cool. One guy talks, one guy listens. Redford got to be flashy because Newman gave him room. The work still lands. Cool Hand, Luke gets referenced in rap lyrics. The Hustler gets remade, studied, dissected. His films gross more on streaming than most new releases. Netflix reported in 2023 that Butch Cassidy was in their top 50 most watched classic films. Kids who weren't born when Newman died are discovering him now and realizing this is where it all started. Here's the bottom line. Paul Newman didn't have the raw emotional access of Brando. He didn't have Dean's vulnerability. He wasn't the most technically gifted actor of his generation. But Newman had something rarer. He understood the mathematics of screen presence. He knew stillness reads as depth. He knew withholding creates hunger in the audience. He knew cool isn't performed, it's withheld. And he knew how to make the camera come to him instead of chasing it. For 2 decades, he turned that knowledge into a career that bent Hollywood's spine. 6 Oscar nominations in the prime. 2 of the biggest films of their respective years. An anti-hero playbook every actor since has tried to decode. A persona so durable that 50 years later, we're still measuring movie stars against the Newman standard. When someone calls an actor effortlessly cool, they're using Newman as the baseline. When directors talk about doing more with less, they're teaching the Newman method. The prime wasn't about volume. It was about precision. And precision, when executed at that level, becomes timeless. Newman proved you don't need to be the loudest or the flashiest. You just need to understand the geometry of presence. Hold the frame. Trust the silence. Make them come to you. That's the code. That's why the work still lands. Drop your definitive Paul Newman moment in the comments. For me, the smile at the end of Cool Hand Luke. 2 seconds of screen time, no words, just that smile. That's the whole code right there.